Oh, just, I don't know
Yeah.
how that can hear us.
Yeah, I mean, that is. Yeah. I don't know, an introduction feels superfluous, but we.
Yeah.
We don't have to do an introduction.
Yeah, welcome.
We just talk.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do I have to pick this thing up?
Well,
You
if
can.
that wants to hear us, I can
Okay.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Sorry. I'll put this down and you'll pick it up on that one.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can do that.
So are you,
Yeah.
are you gonna read for us? Or
I wasn't gonna read.
Not a problem.
I can just talk about kind of give an intro to the book,
Perfect.
which is kind of a summary of the beginning of it. It centers on two siblings, Gabe and Liv Ahlstrom, who grew up on Leech Lake at a resort. They're Irish twins, 12 months apart. They've never liked each other. And when they graduated high school in consecutive years, they wanted to get as far away as possible from Leech Lake. And Liv went to New York and Gabe went to Los Angeles, and now they're in their late 30s and barely have been in each other's lives for the past 20 years. They have an older brother who's half a generation older, Mac, who lives in Chicago. They've also barely had any contact with. And the book starts when they get a call from Mac's widow saying that Mac has died unexpectedly of a seizure. And there's going to be a funeral in Chicago, and so they say they'll come for that. And a few minutes after they get off the phone, they get an email from their dead brother Mac saying, if I die, no matter what it looks like, it wasn't natural, it wasn't an accident, I was murdered. And so the way that happened was he suspected someone was trying to kill him, and he scheduled an email in his outbox to be sent the next day, but every day he woke up alive, he bumped it to the next day, and then when he died, the email sent. So that's super weird to them. They don't know if he was crazy or if there's any validity to it. They go back to Chicago, they ask some people who knew him, they talk to his ex-wife, they hear some more weird things that Max said about their own family when they were growing up, and that's not their recollection at all, but they decide to go up to Leech Lake and have a memorial service for Mac up there, but also investigate some of this weird stuff they heard. And so that's kind of the plot of the book. At its core, I think it's more about siblings and sibling dynamics. Those relationships are formed when we're so young and malleable, and they're very hard to change when people get back together, no matter what kind of success you've had as an adult or how you've established yourself or differentiated yourself. When families get back together, that old pecking order can come back. And so as they're looking into this stuff, they're also have to survive each other and their kind of damaged relationship. That's really what's at the core of the book. But it mostly takes place up in northern Minnesota. And I can't talk too much more about it because it just gives.
Yeah.
It's the hard thing with mysteries that you can kind of talk about how they start, but you really can't go a lot further than that without giving things away.
Yeah. I thought your first chapter, I mean, it's only, what, 500,000 words or
Yeah,
something.
sure.
It's really short.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good.
Oh, thank you.
You know, because you want to pack so much information into that first chapter. You want a hook for the plot, but you also want to create likable characters that you want to see more of. And to do that in whatever it is, 500 or 1,000 words, I think it's difficult. But you had me. I mean, I liked the Gabe character. I liked the Liz character, and I was ready to be, because the hook is interesting, but that's not going to get me to chapter 2.
Right. Yeah, and I'm a big believer in that character is everything, and story is kind of a chalice that holds it all together. But if you're not there for the characters, it doesn't it, it, that's the real value.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you see a lot of books that maybe have some good characters and they don't have a good shell, a good plot to
Right.
move it forward. And I think you could get by more with a good plot and some half-baked characters.
Yeah.
So, like when I first started writing, I was like, I'm gonna get a good plot
Right.
because I'm probably a crappy writer and it's gonna cover up all my mistakes.
Right.
But you have it both. I mean, you have the plot, and I kind of want to talk about, because I'm interested as a writer.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like you had this plot zeroed in before you wrote word one.
I did not.
Okay.
Yeah. I know very little when I start writing, and
That's surprising.
and do I need this? I don't know. All right.
What's the worst thing?
I should have done this, but
Can't hear.
and I love talking to other writers about this. I think if you do plot first,
Mhm.
then you have to try to push your characters
Right.
to fit into that
Mhm.
plot, and if you can let it develop from the inside out,
Right.
it can feel a lot more natural.
Right.
And your characters can behave more true to who they are. I think the reason I can do that is that I worked on a lot of TV. Like I did over 500 episodes of TV. So I wasn't the writer of all those, but I was one of the writers.
And you did procedurals and all that kind of stuff?
Not
Mysteries?
really, it was mostly comedy.
Mostly comedy.
Mostly comedy. But you had to, and that's very character based, not very story based at all. But I just eventually learned the story that way, so I can kind of feel when I'm getting off track.
Did you read the book Story by
McKee?
Ian McKee?
Yeah, I mean, I had it. I don't know if I still have it.
Mhm.
If I do, I don't know what it is. I find that outside-in kind of thinking infuriating to me. Because if your characters don't work, if they're not believable, then all that falls apart. It's
Right.
like building the outside of a house before you have the inside of it built.
Right.
But all the executives out there read it, they all
Sure.
go by it. This is a book about story structure.
I've read it.
Oh, you have, so you know.
Yeah.
I mean, my attitude is if you create three-dimensional characters, start them in motion on conflicting paths, this structure will take care of itself.
Right.
Yeah.
But the one thing you probably have from years of writing is a natural sense of scene. And so I've seen so
Yeah.
many young writers
Right.
that cannot do scene. And if you can do one scene after another, you're going to carry the writer or the reader.
Right.
Can you talk about scene a little bit?
Yeah, you know, I feel like there has to be a real purpose to push things forward, whether
Mhm.
it's a character's development, a relationship dynamic,
Sure.
or just something that pushes the story forward. And if that's not there, don't do it. And you can have you can try to be entertaining in those scenes, but it really has to be there for a reason. I mean, one advantage of crime fiction is crimes kind of have a built-in engine to the story.
Yes.
Because the phone's going to ring and someone's going to say we have the prints off the gun or whatever it is, and that helps. And also, the expectation of the reader is somewhat those short chapters and things move forward, and it's kind of, and that can be a curse for a writer and a benefit, because it's almost like as long as you give them that treat of something twisting at the end of the
Have a
chapter.
little nugget at the end.
Yeah, they'll keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at times I feel really trapped by that. And my last book, A Good Family, it just was a very slow build and kind of and it built to a big place, but some crime fiction readers are like, it didn't start fast enough for me. So, yeah.
Yeah. I do personally, I like that book story.
Yeah.
It was a big thing. I know and everybody reads him as a
Yeah.
screenwriter. I like the idea of a structure of, you go from, you describe the world as it is before
Right.
something happens, and then something happens that sets them on a
Right.
journey, and then there's a resolution at the end. And just that simple structure,
Right.
to me, was helpful.
Yeah.
And then if I took that down to the scene level, I could almost do the same thing.
Right.
And so like the ending, I think in the story talks about, or in the hero myth,
Right.
they talk about bringing something back, some knowledge back to them.
Yeah.
And so I try to end a scene with bringing some knowledge that the
Mhm.
characters have,
Right.
or something that moves the plot along. But of course, you 90% of the time have to have something that moves the plot along.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's all those books that I read early in my career, there's something to be taken from all of
Right.
it. It's kind of like religion, right? There's something useful in each one of them that you can add to your life. But even if you have nothing to do with the religion, but but I just learned, it was really working in television because you have to outline in television.
Right.
Because people have to be on the same page, you have to get approvals from networks and studios. And almost every time we would go through this lengthy story development process. And then we have this giant story beat out on all these whiteboards, and the writer would go, write an outline that was faithful to that, think it was great, come in, the other writers go, that never works. And then there would be this whole redevelopment process, then we get the outline to the place where all the writers thought it worked, and send it to the studio, and they would say, this doesn't really work.
Too many damn egos, right?
Yeah, it's just that part of your brain you use to write an outline or think through story beats often is like the same part of your brain you use to make a shopping list or something.
Right.
And then when you get these characters in there that are live, hopefully feel like live real
Right.
people, it doesn't always mesh.
Right.
And so, and we talked in like structured terms, like second act twist and resolution and what we called act breaks from network TV for
Sure.
commercials. But it was always a kind of feeling our way through the dark when it came to getting the character beats right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I kind of do a hybrid,
Yeah.
because I try to do an outline
Yeah.
a little bit. But the biggest thing is, I have an idea of character, and I have an idea of the emotional arc,
Mhm.
what they're going to learn.
Yeah.
And that's my end,
Right.
And I can see that's probably where you started too, because you've got a brother and a sister that don't get along. Well, by the end of the book, they got to get along, right?
Yeah.
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 But you start learning things about your characters, and they take on a life of their
They
own.
do.
Yeah.
They do, and I think writers have to, like, it sounds stupid because they created the characters, but then they have to listen to those characters. It happened in TV all the time where a character would have to say, well, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but, and it's because they were hammered into place to fit a story that didn't really work for that character.
Right.
They had to act out of character to make the story move forward.
And when you hear that now, it's like a trigger for you.
It is a bit of a trigger. Yeah, it is a bit of a trigger. Well, I can't believe I'm going to say this because the previous 8 chapters have behaved completely differently.
Yeah, funny.
Yeah.
Funny. Okay, I'm gonna look at my cheat
sure.
sheet here, okay, just to
Yeah.
get it. So, what was the spark of this thing? So I know you're thinking, okay, brother and a sister, blah blah blah. Was that where it started, or did it start someplace else?
No, it really did start with I want to my publisher wants me to write these standalones and not very procedurally, which means amateur sleuths, which are really hard to, like, this is my third one.
Yeah, you don't have any cops in here, no detectives.
No, there's a cop who's
Kinda.
Yeah, but she's not a big part of the
Sure.
story. And so I'm like, well, what's the reality of that? People who don't know how to investigate a crime doing it. And so I try to find another dynamic. Like
Right.
they have to work through their relationship to try to make some progress, and then they learn some stuff they didn't know about their family.
Right.
That's really what I wanted it to be, and really that sibling, like our parents can't watch us all the time when we're 2 and 3 years old, even though they're supposed to, and then our interaction with our siblings is really how we learn how the world works. But we're so vulnerable and malleable at that age that whatever dents get made in us stick. Yeah.
Yes, I think we all have
Yeah.
brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Complicated
Right.
relationships.
Yeah, they are complicated.
Yeah, yeah. Thank God my brother lives in the East Coast, my sister lives on the West Coast.
Yes. Oh, you're the Mac of the story.
Yeah, I guess I'm the Mac of the story,
Yeah.
but I think we all had, well, I'm not gonna give away
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
There was some, I do love your writing. There's one little quote that I want to share with everybody.
Sure.
It's very quick, okay?
All right.
It's just 3 lines,
Yeah.
2 lines. For most New Yorkers, the goal is to claw their way to the top. For most Minnesotans, the goal was to not stand out, good or bad. Just blend in and carry on as if you're embarrassed to be alive. So,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Well, one of my personal sayings is I'm embarrassed to be alive, and that, and I was the rare person in Hollywood who wanted no attention. I started as a stand-up comedian.
Really? Okay.
It went well for me. Like, I worked a lot, and I got asked to do a lot of things. I hated being on stage. I loved the writing part of it. And so, and it's not true of all Minnesotans, obviously, but that kind of keep your head down, mow your lawn, no matter how big of a house you have, and do your thing, I didn't really realize it when I was growing up here, but when I went to LA and I saw so many people grabbing for attention, it really stuck out. Yeah.
I've always loved stand-up comedians, and when I was in Las Vegas, actually ran a nightclub and did a stand-up comedian show there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they used to. Do you remember a place called Igby's in
Oh,
LA?
sure. I used to do sets at Igby's.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I ran a nightclub in Las Vegas called Tramps, and to kind of fill in, to kind of, we used to call it shilling, the crowd for the night.
Yeah.
We did a comedy show on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and I went to Igby's and talked to the owner and got him to ship up to, was it 3 or 4 comedians?
Smith? Who?
I think could have been, that
Yeah.
sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got him to ship up, it was like 3 or 4 comedians every week, and
Yeah.
my boss was a casino owner, so he just put him up in the casino.
Right. Yeah.
But they were very jokey off.
No, and I get that all the time. People are like, "You're not very funny for,"
Right.
and I'm like, most comedians
They're
are
introverts.
introverts.
Yeah.
And like, I was fortunate early in my career to get invited to a small dinner when Robin Williams was there. Like, he was so quiet,
Right.
so very nice, sweet, just very easy to talk very nicely. And most comedians are like that on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of performers are too. I mean, even somebody like Chris, like so dynamic on stage, but and then in
Can't
real
talk to
life,
anybody.
very, yeah.
Yeah. I also knew all the comedians that came through the Dunes, and back then
Oh yeah.
it was the Comedy Store. So I know all those
Oh,
guys
all those
back in the
store
late '80s. They used to all come to my nightclubs.
Oh.
I buy them drinks. Some of them had some issues, like some
There's a lot of
cocaine
issues.
problems.
Yeah,
Drug
especially
and
then,
But what's that?
especially back then.
Yeah, I can't remember all the names of
Like,
the
was it
guys.
like Kinnison and that crew? Or?
I saw Kennison.
Yeah.
I took a very polite young banker to the Blue Show that started at, I think, midnight at one of the clubs in Las Vegas. And his show, his Blue Show, his regular show was
Pretty blue.
pretty blue. And then to see him at midnight, and this poor woman that I took out, she's just like staring at. But I laughed.
Yeah.
But needless to say, she never went out with me again.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of comedians that are pretty sad people in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, and if they didn't
Not all of them, but
if they
some of
didn't
them.
go over well, they had a bad set. Oh my
Oh,
God, they were
no.
devastated.
Yeah, you know who wasn't devastated? It was all the other comedians in the back.
Oh.
That's
He bombed.
that's a comedian's favorite thing to do is watch other comedians bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's there's an issue that you're in the entertainment business, but of course when you were writing, you were behind the scenes,
Yeah.
and now you're in front of the scenes. And there's something about putting yourself out there as an artist.
Yeah.
I guess it opens you become vulnerable.
Yeah,
you
you
open
do.
yourself up.
You do.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you read your reviews online?
I try not to. Sometimes I look at the general number, but you can't make everybody happy. There's going to be some. You just can't.
Yeah.
And if you tried to, I think you'd write just much. Do you?
I do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get my feelings hurt,
Yeah.
and sometimes I don't.
I got a text message from a acquaintance who didn't like something in this book, and it really,
And it hurts you.
yeah. And I was really nice when I wrote back to him, but he thought. I mean, I'll just tell you, it's the Judith character, and he's a conservative Christian guy, and he thought I was picking on that, and I didn't think I was.
I really didn't sense
I
that
said
either.
that character. I'm not really giving anything away. Like that character is a bully and a tyrant and a narcissist, and it's absolutely essential she be that way for the plot to work. It wasn't
Right.
just a random thing.
You would have been safer probably to have that character as a male.
Yeah,
There's a thing. It's an interesting topic.
yeah,
So, like, if you want a vulnerable character, you're better off making them a woman. If you want an antagonist, you're better off having it as a male. And it's just somehow for me it's easier to write.
right, yeah.
And it's sexist.
Yeah. And then once I had her on the page, I just had fun. I had a lot of fun writing her.
Did you?
So then I'm like,
That's the important bit.
but I also, without giving things away to them, I needed it to be a woman for the backstory.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
figured out.
Yeah.
I was like, well, it was a man. No, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go back to my notes here.
All right.
This is. I have trouble with genre books where they carry the whole story through dialogue, and I know that they kind of have to do that, or that's just the way it is.
Right.
And you do it here, but I think it's because that it's a brother and sister working out their emotional piece as well as the plot. It worked for me.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
My editor is always trying to get me to not do too much dialogue.
Really? So
Yeah.
what's the rationale there?
Just make it more internal. And it could be a vestige from my screenwriting.
Right, because
Um,
you're always writing dialogue.
Yeah, and then sometimes I read and hear from readers that they love it when it's just dialogue. But like the Roddy Doyle books, have you ever read Roddy?
No.
Irish writer. It's doesn't use quotation marks, just uses a dash, and it's all dialogue, but it works. Um, but yeah, you're always balancing pace with.
And you think dialogue helps with pace?
I think it
Probably
does if
does.
people don't talk in too long of speeches.
Mm-hmm.
And I use this, I'm not applying this word to me, but just to get the idea across. There's often more literary merit, like when you go internal, or whether it's one of the characters' point of views or the author's point of view.
Right, yeah. I've actually been trying to write a romance. It's a long story, but so I read some romances.
Oh yeah, I'm curious to hear about this, 'cause I've wondered too.
Well, because it's interior monologue after interior monologue,
Yeah.
and you get frickin' tired of it.
Yeah,
And I think the good ones don't have as much,
right.
but they, his face is beautiful, his body.
Yeah.
He looked at me, and it's on and on and on. No, but then they go back to dialogue, and so right now I'm kind of struggling. I can feel the pace of it,
Right.
and so I know when I need to do that dialogue,
Mhm.
and I shift into there. But it's not literary. It's
Right.
It's
Yeah,
the opposite.
my
of that.
wife wants me to
It's
write
tropes.
one. Yeah, yeah. And I read one of the Emily Henry books.
I don't. Oh yes, I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about. Yes.
I think The People You Meet on Vacation is what I read.
Right.
And it takes like 10 minutes, and she's a good writer, and it
Mhm.
wasn't, yeah, so,
Yeah. Well, we'll see how
Yeah.
how I go. It's been it's been fun actually. It's I personally like to I self-publish these
Yeah.
thriller kind of books that have a lot to do with Las Vegas. But the book that I got published
right.
was about two lesbians in
Right.
the Arctic. And that's kind of a love story. So I
Yeah.
like to,
Yeah,
and I have the luxury of not having to, make money as
Yeah.
an artist. So
Yeah.
I don't have to totally devote myself to a genre. I don't have to follow up
Right.
with another canoe book with lesbians.
yeah, yeah. I have two books coming out next year. One's a historical.
Wow.
And my publisher made an offer on it, and I turned it, this is about 3 years ago, I turned it down, not because of the money, but because I thought they're not the right publisher for this. There's some crime in it, but it's more of a family, three brothers, it's set in 1922, own a liquor store and they lose it to prohibition. They do not become good members, but it's about how their lives go into corrections and how it affects their family.
Based in Minnesota?
Mostly St. Paul.
St. Paul,
Yeah, there's a little teeny bit of Chicago and a little bit of the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and a little bit of Hinckley. And so I turned it down, and then nobody else wanted it. So, it got really close in other places like Knopf and Doubleday, now the University of Minnesota Press is doing it, and I'm excited about that just because I went to school there, and then I have another standalone coming out with Forge next year.
Yeah. Is it, my experience with the publishing world wasn't very, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun working with editors, and it
Yeah.
was fun working with, a cover designer. But then it's, what's your marketing plan? And then I was kind of stuck doing my own thing, and I did okay,
Yeah.
but of course, like probably every other writer, they think they could have a wider audience if their publisher just put a little marketing and PR behind it.
Yeah, I know, and it's, and you probably know as well as anybody that it's a very small percentage of books that do most of the sales,
Yeah.
and then there's the rest of us.
Yeah. And I think it's like
Yeah.
150 books sell a year, sell over 100,000 copies. and they're this, not 80% of them are the same people over and over.
Right.
And they're brands.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They are brands.
It's a tough world.
I'm slowly building, and
Yeah.
I can feel it. When I go to conventions and things, people,
You're supposed to have a e-newsletter. Are you doing that piece? Are you staying away from it?
I have one, but I forgot to send it I only send one a year, and I forgot to send this one.
Yeah.
So I'll send it.
I've talked to enough writers and read about writers
Yeah.
that say, especially in your business,
Yeah.
once you start doing that, it kind of gets you to the next level because you develop
Yeah.
the super fans
Right,
that help you.
yeah. The
Okay.
problem is, I don't like getting those newsletters from other writers, so I don't wanna contribute to the problem.
I know there is that, yeah. I started the Substack thing.
Oh, how's that?
It's a lot of fun because I'm writing little essays,
Yeah.
little personal things,
Yeah.
and there's kind of a theme to it, and I enjoy
Yeah.
writing them. And some people like them, some people don't. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to play the game,
Right,
but I enjoy writing the
Yeah.
essays. It's just another kind of creative outlet for me.
yeah, oh, that's nice.
And my wife, does a Substack, and she has the paid thing,
Oh, she does.
and she started to make some money. And
Wow.
she does. It's all cookbook and recipes,
Oh.
and she's a cookbook writer. But yeah,
Oh, and my daughter works in the world. Yeah.
what does she do in the world?
She works for a food marketing company, and she develops recipes.
Okay,
And if you go,
she's in New York or something.
no, she's here.
Well, then she knows my wife.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Stephanie Hansen.
Oh, I think she's mentioned you.
Probably.
Yeah.
She's a big influencer in town.
Oh, yeah, I'll ask her.
Yeah.
My daughter's on a trip right now, but she gets back, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you go to Lund's website and you see a recipe and some arms are making it, they're probably hers.
Yeah.
And she does Gelson's in California, and then they work with General Mills and other companies.
Yeah. I set up the boom and the mic and all the things for my wife to do.
Definitely has. Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's
No,
interesting.
I'm interested too. Yeah.
Well, let's see. What do we do here? So you grew up St. Louis Park.
Yeah, in the Midwest, but mostly in Minnesota. Yeah, my dad worked for Sears, so we moved around a little bit. But
Okay.
but always in the Midwest.
Chicago and
A little bit of Chicago, a little bit of Iowa, a little bit of Wisconsin.
And so then you went to the University of Minnesota. Did you study writing there?
No, chemistry.
Chemistry.
Yeah. And then my junior year, some friends invited me to go see stand-up comedy at Williams Pub
Oh yeah.
down in the basement. And when I saw that, for some reason, I thought, oh, I should do that, which was just such a left turn. Yeah.
Yeah. So that got you into writing. It wasn't like I remember being turned on to some books in college, and I thought, oh, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, and you know what? In high school, I took AP English and had a really good teacher, and I read great books. And
Catcher in the Rye, I'm sure.
I don't know if I read that in that. A lot of Dostoevsky,
Oh, okay.
Camus. What else did we read in that class? I can't remember everything, but like serious literature, and I loved it. I just didn't know any writers. I didn't know how to be a writer. No one ever told me I couldn't be a writer, but nobody ever suggested I should be one. So I just thought, oh, I'll have a normal life and keep reading books, and then stand-up changed all that.
And you were part of the stand-up heyday, right?
Yeah,
80s.
80s. Louis had already left, Louis Anderson.
Okay.
Jeff Cesario had already left, but came back a lot.
And I'm sure you knew all those guys.
Oh yeah, and they were, when I moved out to LA, there was a bunch of them. The Midwest Comics was kind of my network.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I think I've actually tried to write comedy,
Yeah.
and I can't write jokes. There's something in my head that says
Right.
I can't write jokes.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that mindset is, but I can do funny stories.
Well, and Seinfeld was not jokes.
Yeah, what were they observational humor?
It was just like character and situation, like, because I was there in the beginning, and I would write jokes for George's, Jason George Costanza,
Right.
and if you knew it was a joke, you couldn't do it. But then when we started writing attitude for him,
Right.
it was great.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's I can't.
Yeah.
I can write attitude. I can
Right.
write funny little
Yeah.
bits and stuff.
Which, when that works, is way
Yeah.
better than jokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's coming from character.
Yeah. So yeah, the latest book I finished, and it's with a couple first readers, has a kid in Las Vegas that aspires to be a comedian. And he's listening to all these
That's
albums.
great.
And he goes to the nightclub. This is the nightclub I ran.
Right.
And he sees these stand-ups, and he finally gets to go up there.
Yeah.
But it's like, what kind
How
of
old is
comedian
he?
do I want to
Yeah.
be? And then, of course, I have to write the bits for him.
Yeah, that's hard. And it takes, which for a beginning comedian probably shouldn't be great. It takes a long time to find your voice on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm writing fictions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of comedians got into writing. And
A lot
yes.
from here did too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many of them worked on Roseanne.
And I met Roseanne.
Yeah, me too. I've spent some time with her. How'd it
Yeah.
go for you?
She just looked at me and was silent.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wasn't very talkative to me, and I was kind of at a table with a bunch of comedians.
Yeah.
And they're all, somewhere,
Out there or here?
It was in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
She was in the nightclub I was
Yeah.
running. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I wanted to talk to her and talk, but
Yeah.
she was
because she
Yeah.
dated Tom Arnold.
from Minnesota.
Yeah, Tom brought all these, I don't know if you remember Sid Youngers or Mike Gandolfi, Don Foster, all these Minnesota comedians went in and wrote on Roseanne.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you get that gig?
Fortunately, I already had a job because it was a nightmare of a job.
She was mean, I heard.
She's a very different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she wasn't nice to me, but she wasn't mean either. But
Yeah.
I'd heard that she was a tough
Yeah.
customer. And what about Ellen? Did she ever dress you down?
No, when I worked with Ellen, she was good. I did not, I mean, I heard all that stuff about, I wrote on the sitcom, not the talk show, but there were some people complaining about her on the talk show. That was not my experience with her, so, yeah.
Fun. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, do you have any questions about anything?
Oh, this is
For
fascinating.
either of us?
I had some, but
Yeah.
I forgot them.
I'll ask a mechanical
Yeah.
question. One of the interesting things is seeing people's patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
Right? Like these are full-grown adults, and yet when they revert back to being children.
Right.
The problem is for an audience who's just been introduced to these people, it isn't obvious the difference between the gulf
Yeah.
between their current self and that old pattern of
Yeah.
behavior. How do you generate forward momentum with a plot while still making clear,
Well,
like
there was
without doing the
definitely a
backstory?
balance
Yeah.
there, because I didn't want them to be too bickery too much, because when nobody likes to listen to that. It gets old really fast. So it was, one thing is I set up where they are in their adult lives, and they're adult enough to, like, when they get to a certain point, to drop it, like, especially because Mac has just died, but they do get on each other's nerves, and they don't like get sophomoric. It's not like you are, no you are, no you are. It wasn't that kind of stuff. But it really, I kept rewriting that to try to find the right progression and balance, so they didn't become too obnoxious. And I don't know if I succeeded. Some people probably.
I thought it was the right balance.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think like all my characters have to have a superpower.
Right.
So it kind of
Uh-huh.
separates them out.
Yeah.
Like my one kid is gonna be funny.
Right.
And so I think if you set it up where this woman is she's successful, she runs a business, and you set up the other guy as being the dude in the Big Lebowski,
Yeah.
then it's just gonna naturally flow
Yeah.
out of that. You don't have to Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also my observation, which doesn't really answer the question at all, that siblings often define each other in relation to one another. So if one is the oldest one is the brainiac who does really well in school, the next one doesn't want to compete, so they go a different direction. Yeah, which has nothing to do with ability or aptitude. It's just I don't want to be that person.
Differentiating
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
I have a friend that his kid is, top professional soccer player. And when I see him, it's, what's his name? Matt, or not Matt, it's, I forget. He's doing this, and he's that, and let me show you this clip, and he's on tonight, we gotta watch him on TV tonight. And I keep asking him, well, what's your other son doing?
We don't talk about it.
So I feel sorry for the kid,
Yeah.
living in that shadow.
Just because I love soccer a lot. Where does that person play?
He's playing for Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
Now.
I go to the Lens games, yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't follow. I didn't even follow basketball until the
Yeah.
Wolves started winning.
Right.
Now I do.
Yeah. I know, which is another thing about like we're between basketball game nights, so people are exhausted, I think, from staying at home
I
watching.
was on pins and needles on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I know. I caught the fourth quarter in my hotel room last night.
It's
It's
very
not
Minnesota.
not as fun as the game before.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of fun leading up to the fourth quarter.
It was.
I think.
There had to be a little letdown after that seventh game in Denver.
I think so, and it's like to Denver after they got done with the Lakers. I think they
Right.
were exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, who do we have to play now?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
So hopefully they'll come back.
Do you have any questions about basketball?
The whole thing.
Yeah.
My son was a basketball player, but I
Oh,
only
yeah.
watch basketball if my kids or grandkids are playing. 'Cause
Yeah.
I can't stand it. I get too,
Oh.
like last night when the
PTSD.
second half
Yeah.
started, and things started to kind of fall apart.
Mhm.
I had to turn it off.
Yeah.
It's like I can't do this.
Yeah.
Too anxiety.
It's too anxiety provoking, but I
Yeah.
love the sound of the squeaky shoes on the floor.
Yeah, I like that
You
too.
know, and if you're at the Target arena, you can't hear the squeaky shoes on the floor.
Right.
It's true.
Just saying.
It's
But
loud and-
Yeah, those reviews on Amazon, they kind of cause a lot of anxiety for me too. And I'm not going to ever read these again. And 3 days later, somebody posts something, and oh my god. So yes, I need to stop.
Yeah.
They're always great when they begin. I got this book free.
Oh,
and then
yes.
they start
Oh,
with
I
the
know.
complaints.
Thanks, net.
And
Yeah.
Goodreads is like a really negative.
Yes. Yeah. Snarky.
I love that
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
And they all think they're cool writers. And
There's a lot of entitlement to hate stuff. Like,
Yes.
here's my thought, it has nothing to do with any books or anything, but I had to take a lot of Ubers in the last few days,
Mhm.
to and from airports and to bookstores, and I always give them 5 stars.
Sure.
Even if it's not perfect, and then they want to give, because they're going to rate me, and so there is this symbiotic relationship between driver and passenger where let's just make the best of it and give each other good reviews and give each other the benefit of the doubt so we can all go on and live our happy lives. And that's kind of what's missing from society right now.
Yeah, and it's probably always been there.
Yeah.
The ugliness of our
Oh,
humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no anonymity with Uber, which there kind of is with online reviews for everything else, because you're a person with an account and they know you. Like if you have a low rating, those drivers just won't pick you up.
Really?
Yeah, I've never had that, but I know people.
I will always give
So if you don't tip them like a big tip, then do you get a low rating or?
I've never noticed.
Okay. I haven't taken it
I haven't
yet,
either,
but
but I don't think that's the case, but.
No, I think it's like if you're
You're
not where
rude.
you say you're
vomit
gonna
in the
be,
car.
if you're that,
that-
yeah. Yeah, definitely that. Yeah.
So yes, try to be kind to your neighbor and give them 5 stars.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. And then there's the Judiths of the world, and she's just gonna give 1 star to everybody.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
the most Midwestern thing is it's 5 stars or not, or you just won't leave.
Yes.
Right? So I've many times not left a review for my Uber driver, which is like, for me, the lowest possible thing.
Yeah.
It's 5 stars or nothing.
Yeah.
Or I
You don't
just
have
will
something
pretend
nice to
casually
say.
not to have gotten
Yeah.
the thing at all.
Yeah.
But I couldn't bring myself to do 4 stars and cost somebody their livelihood, but I'm also not gonna give him 5 stars
Right.
if he ran multiple reds. So that's that's the way I approach this issue is.
And I don't give reviews of books ever.
I don't
online.
either, ever.
Yeah, it's just gonna get me in trouble, and I don't wanna do a bad review, and I don't wanna give them anything less than 5 stars, but I'm not gonna give it a 5-star just because I read the book. This is not an Uber driver,
No,
that's
I-
art here.
That's
There's
right.
a couple
It's
of
5
times
stars
when
or
I've
nothing.
given a 5-star review or something,
Have you?
but I'm not gonna do anything less than that. So
Yeah.
I do very, yeah.
See, 5 stars or nothing.
Yes.
Yeah,
This is the way to live life.
I got a friend, he's a professor, and he thinks he's all smart. And so I said, gave him a copy of The Barons, which is a great book.
Right.
And he writes a review. It's a great book, love this book, 4 stars. 4 stars!
That kind of thing has
4
happened
stars.
all the time to me. I love this book from page 1. I couldn't set it down. The
3
ending
stars.
blew me away. 3 stars. What the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I called him on it, and I said, Charlie, what's with the 4 stars?
Yeah.
You know, this is my livelihood
Right.
here. People buy based on,
Right.
whether how many stars you freaking got on
Yeah.
Amazon. He goes, I don't give A's out unless they really, really deserve it.
I don't know.
Hey, fuck.
One of those. I've had this guy in class numerous times.
Yeah.
My aunt gave me 4 stars on Amazon for my book, and when I said, that's just mean, she said, well, I didn't want to sound too biased. Nobody knows who you know. I don't have enough
That's
ratings
funny.
for this not to.
What's your?
Yeah, just years ago.
Yeah.
for a fiction. The sort that deserves
Yeah.
4 stars, but if that. But still, your aunt? I mean, that's just mean.
Yeah. That's a tough one.
Because she's old and she doesn't understand how to do
Half
stars.
stars.
Well,
Yeah, I know, it could have been
what
2,
are
it was whatever was
stars?
closest to the
Yeah.
mouse in that moment, presumably, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just casting here.
Oh, yes.
My likes and dislikes. There's been this trend lately of young voices, and I'm all for young voices, but I'm tired of young voices, and I don't think people do it very well. They create these child voices that are very vulnerable
Oh,
and very cutesy, and
the author's not a young voice. The characters.
the characters,
Yeah.
young voices. And there's been some great books with young voices in the past. I don't know if you've ever read Rule of the Bone.
No.
I don't know what company, but it's called Rule of the Bone. And it's amazing. It's all like 15-year-old kid,
Oh, nice.
internal monologue,
Right.
and I loved it. But there's just a trend now. I just start reading these books, and it's a young kid, and I just
Do they get classified as YA?
this is what I think. I think that they're not,
Right.
and I think they should be.
Yeah.
And I think they're dumbing down their writing for certain readers.
Right. Ah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Interesting.
So you don't have any young voices that I just insulted.
No, not in this book. The book I write for 2026 might have one 12-year-old in it. And it'll be in 3 people's points of view. Yeah.
Which will be handy in terms of differentiating.
But there's all 3
Perspectives.
generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you always do third person, multiple character?
No, as a matter of fact, the first 4 books are first person. The 5th book is first person. 6th book is a very close third,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the only one where I get multiple.
2.
Yeah, yeah. The one that comes out next year is third person multiple, and the first one that's present tense.
Present tense. Was that fun?
Yeah, it is fun. It's easy for me to go back and forth because all screenwriting is present tense. So,
Right. Yeah. That book I wrote, The Barons, was present tense, first person point of view, and then I had an agent that convinced me to put the inciting incident up front.
Mhm.
So when I did that, which I think was a good idea. I had to turn the whole thing
Yeah.
past tense. So. There's
Yeah.
no AI.
I have gone
app to
back
do
and
that.
forth.
Have you?
Yeah, and then you always find things you missed. And yeah, I wonder if that's a good point. AI can just make this all pass.
Yeah, I don't know if that exists yet.
Yeah.
And if it does, it would be insidious, because 1 out of every 17 wouldn't make sense any longer.
Yeah.
The middle of some sort of sentence would,
Yeah.
right, some piece of dialogue.
Yeah.
Are we gonna go to have gone to the store?
Yeah.
And poor AI doing its best with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That happens just with search and replace.
Yeah.
Like if a person's last name is Green and you feel like that doesn't work, make it Johnson, then there'll be like the Johnson leaves on the trees where, you know, it finds other, yeah.
Is there any point of view that you particularly like, or just whatever works for the book?
No,
works for the
whatever works
story?
for the book, yeah. I don't, when I'm reading and writing, I don't think I'd ever try second person.
Yeah, I can never remember what that is. It's like they or
It's
something.
the you.
You.
Like
You.
you're walking down the street and you see
I published a book in second.
oh, did you? It's really hard.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
The reason it's terrible is mechanical, which is that there's I and me, and in you it's just you, which means that you use the word you
Yeah.
Always.
twice as often, and you just can't
Oh.
avoid it sentence by
That's
sentence.
interesting.
Yeah, and it took too long for me to figure that out.
Yeah.
Was that there's no way you know, as a writer, you intuitively will structure
It's a
every
very
so often a new
difficult-
sentence to avoid that, and you can't do it with that.
Yeah. It's,
And so you
Has
just
any-
end up starting every sentence with you.
Has any famous author ever achieved?
Lori Moore.
Okay, you've
And-
looked into this.
Yeah, and Lori Moore, once I was at a AWP, and she was the keynote speaker, like 3,000 people there, and somebody stood up who was an undergraduate and was like, I really want to write in the second person, and everybody tells me it's a terrible idea, but you wrote this whole book in second person. What should I tell them? She's like, oh, it's a terrible idea, and you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You're referring to like one book, she's like, which had like 3 short stories in it of 8, which were in second person. It's a bad idea, you
Oh.
shouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's really
And you just
difficult.
watch this poor undergraduate like crumble, and you know she'd gone all the way there just to ask this question, but Lori Moore was right. Mechanically speaking, it's a flawed. There are some like specific
Yeah,
mechanics.
it's interesting how young writers, first time writers, I think everybody tries to be a little too clever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where
That's it.
really what we're doing is telling stories.
Yeah.
And if you can tell a good story, then you're just gonna be just fine. And if you need to do a certain structure, you do a certain structure.
And I'm from the Kurt Vonnegut school of make it as simple for the reader as you can, make it easy to digest, and if you get too tricky,
The guy that wrote Slaughterhouse 5 and bounced around in time.
he did bounce around in time, but his language is very simple.
Right.
Yeah, but he did bounce around. Yeah.
Where you can't draw pictures. Specific
Oh,
body
yeah.
parts.
Yes, he does draw pictures.
Oh, did he?
Well, in Breakfast of Champions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's no drawing.
It's been a while since.
Yeah. But, yeah. Any other questions?
I just like what you did with Edina and,
Oh, yeah.
have you
Did you
taken
blow it
any-
up?
Taken any grief about that?
No.
It's just
I
so
know a lot of
perfect.
people who live in Edina and they all love it.
Yeah.
They love it. Yeah. I was a little worried about it.
Were you nasty about it, Diana?
No, he was
No.
accurate.
No, but I mean that you know, there's people, and I do have a character, the main character, Katie, in that's the close third book, who grew up not in a family of means, and she kind of married into one, and she's around her friends, and all talking about taking private jets and this and that. She's like, I get it. Like, and then there's nothing wrong with those characters. It's just the world they live in. So it's not damning of them. It's more like her attitude of what private jets. Yeah.
Will you write any more Shapiro books?
Yes. 35,000 words into one right now. I don't know who's going to publish it, but my agent said somebody. I don't know if it'll be my publisher or not. Yeah.
I just wanted to show you that she's okay.
read that.
Isn't that
It really
right?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
read it for a class in
We were in,
2022, we were in Peters.
you actually
How are
you?
spoke
You
to
were,
us.
You in
Oh,
Peter's
did I?
class?
We're in Peter's class.
Peters.
Your guy.
I heard that was great.
Oh, shit.
It was great.
And I was in his first class.
Yeah.
And I heard he's not, feel free to browse this one.
Yeah.
I heard he's not teaching it.
Oh, yeah.
He's,
He's got a class this year. I
he's
don't
got
know.
Does he?
one this year, but I
Maybe
don't
someone
know
gave
that
me
he's
bad information.
next year. We thought he
We don't
wasn't
know, we
gonna
thought
do
he
it
wasn't
again
gonna do
too,
it, yeah.
and then he did.
Oh.
But then he
Oh,
was,
cool.
I talked to somebody who did his 6-week class.
Ah,
Hmm.
That was the guy who did Doorman Wanted. You seen that book?
Oh.
Why not?
Oh, God, it's fascinating.
His name, he has a name that's named somebody else.
It's a very common name, yes, I'm sorry. I can't think of it.
Glenn Miller.
Glenn Miller.
Ah,
Yeah, no, we have mutual friends and
Okay,
we're gonna,
I saw him at Excelsior Day, and
oh, yeah.
he's absolutely funny.
Oh,
And
great.
Just a great,
Yeah, I've
great
heard
guy.
he's great.
So that's a good book.
great.
If your bookstore ever wants to get, no,
You probably
Doorman
have that.
Wanted, it's his
Probably.
first book,
Yeah,
his first book, and it's
yeah,
terrific.
he has a
Very clever.
production company in town, right? He does some,
That I don't know,
oh, alright,
no. We didn't get into that.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what Peter's doing. I think he was getting a little bit of the cold shoulder
He was?
yeah, and so.
That one's fine. I mean,
no, they were
the law.
changing
At the law.
there were administrative
I
changes
heard
in
that.
focus,
That's what I
I
heard.
think, and
Yeah,
wanted more.
Yeah. He was teaching this
Diversity.
year.
yeah,
That's
that's
what I
probably
heard.
the right word,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
don't know, I think he got a job. I haven't talked to him in a while, so I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't either.
He was, I mean, throughout my publishing process, he was very kind and helped me out a
Yeah,
lot.
he's a really nice guy.
Yeah, and gave me great advice and blurbed me and
It's a great.
was at my release
Oh,
party and all
nice.
that, so he was great. Yeah, I wish him well. I know he has a too big book deal with,
He does.
yeah, so.
He said there's
With Minnesota, or, yeah,
one's finished and is, he just sent it off, I think.
Okay, okay.
oh, good. Yeah, it's interesting, I, you know, I was at the Poison Pen, which is probably the most influential mystery bookstore in the country in Scottsdale on Tuesday night. And I went out to dinner with the owner last night and she's like, where's Nils? Where's Nils coming back? That's what everybody asked. And I explained the situation and she said, self-published. Like, Nils has a following, I made way more money doing that than,
That's, I'm playing with that now,
Yeah.
self-publishing and trying to cause I was an online marketer for
oh, you
for
were?
years.
Yeah, I'm terrible.
But it's difficult,
Yeah,
but, you know, I wasn't, it's a hard gig.
yeah.
That was gonna be one of my questions, is like,
Hmm. How do we do this?
I can't even keep up with, like my book published on Tuesday, just Facebook and Instagram and Threads, which are the three I kind of do. I couldn't even keep up with messages, like, yeah, I need a person.
You got a fan base, that's
Well,
great.
it's not that much, but
It's enough.
it's enough to,
how did you get the Barron's, how did you get anybody to be an agent, to look at it? I mean,
I ended up getting 2 agents, so just querying agents, and I got a woman initially, and she loved the book and didn't think it needed much work and was ready to go, and then, you know, she started giving me notes, and I was still at it with her a year later, and I learned a lot. In fact, I learned a lot about
right.
scene structure, and how to
Mhm.
tighten up my scenes. But then she dropped me after a year, just, I think, lost interest. And then within another 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, I was able to get another agent, and then the agent was able to sell it in 2 or 3 months.
So that's great.
Yeah, so it was,
Is that the Alaska one?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's Northern Canada,
Oh,
yeah.
no, we can't, yeah.
And so that went pretty well.
Quite a business.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, you guys wanna walk over to the signing table?
Sure.